Metaverse, and we're going to get in on it, but the first thing I want to do is basically define what the Metaverse is from our panel in quick, one phrase, one sentence. What is the Metaverse for you? So Ridhima, go first. What's the Metaverse?
The metaverse is something that I think is best described by a series of attributes rather than a specific definition. I think it's hard to put your finger on it, but I think some of those attributes mean that there can be concurrent users at the same time in a digital place. It's something that will exist at all hours of the day. It's something that where there will be economies, where there will be people that can gather from all around the world and have experiences that exist at all times.
It's a great answer. I think to add to that, it's an evolution of where we are today. Everyone in this room spends a lot of time on their phone, on their computer, and you guys are at the forefront of what really is the metaverse today. It might be a picture on Twitter, it might be the way that you engage on Reddit, and increasingly it will be these more engaging digital worlds. But we're already here, and we're building kind of that future that we know will be possible, and really the goal is to bring more people to where we are now and make it more fun and engaging in the future.
I think my definition of the metaverse as it stands today, and I think it's probably going to be different by this afternoon or tomorrow, but I think it's a parallel. It's a parallel reality in the digital space where users can come together and experience the worlds and platforms that are becoming available, and also play in the worlds that developers are building on top of them. And within that, you can create your own fantasy persona of yourself as much as technology will allow for. It's an incredible communication tool. It's a place for collaboration and shopping and expressing yourself. And ultimately, I think that users are the ones that are really going to create and define what the metaverse becomes on a constant basis.
Just 1 second, Sina, we got to get your sound on. Can we get audio for him, please? Can you?
Which is amazing. That's an incredible opportunity for everyone. And then there are other platforms that are much more curated, and you have to sort of figure out how do you navigate. Does that fit for what you're trying to do? And I don't know if the question is it for the biggest stars in the world, or like what can anyone do as well on this platform? And I think it's from like the most early access point, of I just happen to want to put my things out there, to the biggest superstars in the world. And it's a range between all of that. And I think that's another really interesting area, is like what's best for, what can be done, what can you do, and what's best for each person.
No, absolutely. Sina, what do you think, man?
I mean, I think everybody on the panel just nailed it. I mean, the only things that I would add are like, I would start with the why. Like, why are you looking at the metaverse? What is your intention here? And this is maybe like a derivative or a corollary to the authenticity component, because I totally agree. Like, it has to be fully authentic, because otherwise, like I think Mike said, people are going to smell it. And so that for me, that comes back to the why. Like, why are you doing this? Once you have a really clear picture of that, then I think you can start to talk about and think about and express a story. Because as people, we are hardwired to really respond to stories. And I think that's what's happening, whether it's explicitly or implicitly. We're telling stories here of these brands, of these individuals, of these leagues, whatever the case may be. So again, like everybody, I think was already saying, I would take inventory, like understand your brand, understand what you're representing, like in a granular way, and then sort of map that to the capabilities that the metaverse provides to you in an authentic way. And then lastly, I would just say, look at some comps. I mean, who else has done this? Who's done a good job here? Who do you admire in terms of how they've sort of approached the space? And then, shamelessly borrow from that, get inspired by it, and let your own creativity, let your own creative juices sort of flow, hopefully, but start with stuff that's already worked.
All right, just in the audience, who here is skeptical of the metaverse? That's okay. We got one person. All the rest of you drank the Kool-Aid then. Now we have two. Well, I'm glad. No, I mean, this is really interesting here because when we did our pre-briefing, I asked a very basic question. I'm going to ask you all again to share this. The moment that you went from metaverse skeptic to, convert, when you're like, oh, this tastes good, it's strawberry, Sina, let's start with you. When did you drink the Kool-Aid, Holmes?
Man, for me, it goes back before people were talking about the metaverse, really. I mean, it was just, it's more of a crypto sort of thing, which I think led into the metaverse. It's just sort of, they sort of play together quite nicely. And, I grew up here in Silicon Valley, and I was fortunate to know a number of, really well-known and well-regarded computer scientists and founding CTOs of well-known Silicon Valley companies. And when I sort of got wind of this stuff, I went and sat down with a couple of them and I asked them, hey, does this pass the sniff test? Do you think this is interesting? And some of the most well-regarded computer scientists that I know, without flinching, they're like, this is the real deal. This is interesting. And so that to me just put away all of my doubts, and I was like, okay, time to get involved here.
Ridhima, how about you? When did you turn it over?
Yeah, I think I've been running towards this for a little bit. I've been super excited about it. I think Matt Ball, actually one of our advisors, put out a great white paper on it a couple years ago, and that was really a pivotal moment in my mind.
Josh?
I'm not a native metaverse, or I don't consider myself to be leading having a history of leading the charge with Web 3.0, but I've always loved technology and the intersection with art and culture and tech. For me, I think the defining point was really with my children. I have an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old, and being at home with them during the pandemic, we were all cooped up together, and I had a very bird's eye view of what they were doing online. I was like, all right, okay, what are you doing? And in parallel to that, you keep taking my money and doing something with it. What is that exactly? And you need more of it. So, seeing that my kids, excuse me, we were out too late last night. Seeing that my kids were both having absolutely no hesitation buying ones and zeros that had no physical, intrinsic value. It was just things that they wanted to see themselves in. They wanted to show their friends that they had, or that it was going to unlock some additional experience. That's mind-blowing, and I think that we're rapidly getting past that question of do people really value the ones and zeros, these virtual goods? Will people spend money on it? Do they care about it? And everyone here it's not a conversation, but I don't know about anyone else, but there's a lot of people in my world that are still really? They're really going to do that? Is it a fad? But when you see the young generation and how it's not a question, it's a part of life. And so we have that runway to play around with. It's here, and that was really a pivotal moment for me.
How about you, Mike?
I think two things. One, I'm a child of what they call the Oregon Trail generation. And so I think like a lot of us, I grew up playing...
Yeah, no, seriously,
right? I grew up spending time in a digital world, traveling across the country. I played SimCity, where I was building a city. I played a game literally called Civilization, right? And those are really old games, so this stuff has been around for a long time. I never really got into World of Warcraft, but people have been selling digital goods from those types of games in sort of a gray black market on eBay for 20, 25 years now. So these things that seem like they're new have really long antecedents. And I think the other really interesting thing is I was a weird kid growing up, as you probably deduced, and I was building music metadata databases on my own, and that kind of led to things that were, pre-Pandora, some of the earliest music services that I was working on. And my whole life was all about how do I get this information, and then how do I share it with people? And really, that's what the blockchain is about. It's taking that metadata and making it so it's more accessible, right? Everyone can see it, people can verify it, and then now with smart contracts, you can really do stuff with it. And in '97, when ICOs came out, I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I've been trying to do, where I'm collecting all of this data and then putting it out in the world. Now we have tools that everyone can start to utilize this information in a better way. And since 1997, I've been trying to figure out how to merge these things together. And thankfully, people like Josh and his company are starting to build fun experiences on top of what was, just kind of boring metadata for nerds. And now we can all start to participate in it because there are consumer experiences that are fun and engaging, built on this verifiable blockchain truth that we can all utilize.
This mental model that you put forward, it was very visual when you said it the first time to me on our group call. And I love it because it's structuring something, you can't see metadata, right? But if you really think about this, it starts with metadata. That's the atom. And then now with smart contracts and crypto kitties and blockchain games, we finally see the atom turn into something we can actually entertain ourselves with. And because we're having fun with it, we build the emotional attachment, which then your children, basically for them, video games have always existed. I was 7 when I got a Nintendo, and now I have a career in it. But this is the thing, is that it's these things that a generation ahead of us, they'd be like, what the hell are you doing? But now they're like, oh my gosh, this is a big business, right? And it does come down to a simple thing of structuring something that you cannot see, but then all of a sudden it becomes real. And I think that is one of the most powerful things, and what's exciting about the metaverse is that it's capturing human endeavor. That to me is what the metaverse ultimately is. It's human endeavor expressed in multiple ways. Now, we have some questions coming in from the audience here. Not from you guys, I'm sorry that we can't ask your guys' questions, but if you are on Discord, feel free to get on Discord and you can send something over to us. But we got something here that came in that says here, and this is gonna be open for all of you, okay? So you guys jump in, I'm not even gonna call out names, just jump in. And it's very straightforward. What is the metaverse going to provide that is positive for humanity from a quote unquote metaverse skeptic?
I love that question. Excuse me. That was something that we were talking about a little bit yesterday. I think that with young people and with everyone, but I'm most excited about young people hopefully changing the world. But, I think that there's an opportunity for people to interact, engage, and be able to take action in ways that really have been have had a much higher barrier of entry so far. And I think that being able to actually give the youth a voice and actionable things that they can participate in and learn from is one of the things that I'm most excited about. This is not Web 3.0, but when I look at what Mark Rober and what Mr. Beast are doing, coming together and engaging this huge footprint for these 2 initiatives they did. One was for Team Trees, another one was for Team Seas. Incredibly powerful to engage the youth like that. And I am inspired to take a step further with that and explore building games where the purpose of it might be to clean up the ocean through the game, or whatever games for good your initiatives might be. But I think that we can engage a huge audience through Web 3.0 and through gaming in a very organic way where the world can participate, earn, or help bring funding and awareness to these causes and potentially be able to affect change in a big way in areas that really desperately need help right now.
I think from a self-expression standpoint as well, in the metaverse or in the real world, we're kind of defined by these very confining pieces of data or information or paths that you've taken in your life. I think in the metaverse, being able to recreate yourself in a way that you think is really core to who you are as a person and not necessarily defined by some of the superficial things that we end up defining ourselves with is one thing that's going to be really beneficial. I think being able to build global communities and interact with people that you might not otherwise get a chance to with sort of this almost blind approach that you would normally be judging someone else on, but in this case, you kind of get to be exactly who you want and you get to interact with anybody that you want. Is the second one. And then I think really democratizing experiences, places, and information is going to be something that's going to be good for humanity that the metaverse can provide.
And I'll jump in with a really quick answer, which is distribution, right? The internet has always been really good at distributing information. And so what it does is it reduces the amount of gatekeeping and it reduces the cost. And so now you're starting to see a world where a young kid who lives in an emerging market can create a digital product that is equal and just as good or maybe even better than some big company. And before that company would have controlled the means of distribution, they would have had relationships with suppliers and they would have paid their way to be at the end cap in the store. And their version of that product would be more or less the only version that we could access. And that is not true in these new worlds that we're building. One of the things that we do at Bitski is to track the economic activity of the metaverse, and we believe that at some point, and we can all take a guess as to when this might happen, there will be more economic activity in the digital world than in the physical.
Sina, what do you think, man?
I mean, love all these comments and pretty much agree with all of them. I mean, just two quick thoughts. One is, I think what we're talking about is expression. Like people are expressing themselves and different ways to express themselves. I think it's a very powerful concept. The other thing that comes to mind, I think Mike was just talking about economics. I mean, I remember back to, I think, high school economics, the teacher would say, economics is the study of how unlimited wants are reconciled with limited resources. And so I think those wants are still unlimited. People want everything. I want everything. You want everything, right? But now we have another way, another set of resources to go after those and to express those and to transact. So I think it's going to be super, super interesting.
Okay, so let me ask this other question that came in over here. It's what common or reoccurring errors are you seeing made when people build communities in the metaverse? I mean, this is where we get to the scandal. Let's get into it. Like, what are the mistakes? Who wants to take a stab at it?
Moderate your Discord really well. Really, really well.
So that smiling ice cream thing isn't ice cream? Josh, what do you think, man?
I think it goes back to the question of what's authentic to what you're, what you yourself, or if you're a public persona, are you on brand here, and do you understand the audience, and are you doing something that is going to be an added value, or have you just completely missed the mark? And we see a lot of those things, right? Where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that those guys just did that. And, whether it was like, it just smells like a money grab, or, it's really like not the appropriate, it's not the appropriate messaging. I don't want to necessarily refer to anything in specific, but we all can think of those moments. I mean, they're happening all the time. It's just when you get it wrong, you hope that the next time they do it, they're going to figure it out.
Okay, so I get it that, let me go to flip around this way. It shouldn't be a cash grab because it's inauthentic, right? We're looking at behavioral mechanics, trying to get people to do something based on something, right? So one would say then that if your intentions are not good, you may come up with an outcome that you don't want, right? So that knowing the value, knowing what you're trying to accomplish, knowing why you're doing it becomes extremely important. But then let me just ask from a practical standpoint, should I just go hire my 15-year-old nephew to make me a metaverse? Because, he plays video games, so he must be good at it. And, I mean, is someone tell me no, or is that a yes?
I think it's a yes.
Is it a yes? Why?
I put all the trust in the kids. Go for it.
That's actually very true. No, but what? No, honestly, how should I do that then? What should I do? If basically I want to create this, what am I going to go do?
One thing too is that you don't have to go all in right away.
Okay, let's
And
talk
a lot
about
of the brands that we, like that you work with or that you work with, we're trying earlier iterations to really figure out what is authentic for their audience, because that's a hard question to answer, right? And as a brand, like you can do brand studies, you can do lifts, you can see what happens on social media, but that's not what we're talking about here. It's a new form of content and entertainment, and so you need to test and trial a little bit. And we work with a lot of brands, and I know you have similar conversations. How do we figure out what's going to work, and what are the ways we can experiment without spending months and millions of dollars building something really crazy? And I think those opportunities exist now. And in many ways, if you have a less sort of plugged-in audience, it's okay because they're not necessarily ready to go deep into some crazy world either. And so how are we, as an industry, bringing people along and making it really, really consumer-friendly, really easy? Because a lot of what we're talking about now, these virtual worlds and the Web3 infrastructure as it exists today, is complicated.
Yeah.
I think anyone who's tried to buy NFTs or do some of the more complicated swaps and some of the things that happen in crypto and blockchain, it's not easy even for people that are in it every day. And so figure out who your audience is and then see, are they ready for that? Are we as a brand? Maybe not. Okay, what can we try first? And there's lots of ways to experiment with that.
Yeah.
And the easiest thing to do is to follow Snoop Dogg. He has been at the forefront of digital, I know it sounds funny, but he's been at the forefront of digital technology for a really, really long time. And you can basically track, like, let's do what Snoop Dogg's doing like 6 months later. And you saw he was selling NFTs before almost everyone. He was buying land in the sandbox before almost everyone. And so, you know, you can look, and Timberland said this really well, like, culture drives society, and there are leading indicators that we can all sort of pay attention to and see where things are headed.
Yeah, I think another piece of it too is that in this digital world, you can make data-driven decisions. So you can iterate and change your strategy, and you can respond to your users. And if you're creating the space, whether it's through Discord or other online communities or even through DAOs, I think that it's really important to be able to make those types of decisions and hear your community out.
Let me ask the audience here, how many of you guys have gone to a concert in the metaverse? Okay. How many of you have actually played Roblox with your kids, your nieces or nephews? Who's actually gamed with your kids, right? So when we were on the call and we did this, Josh, you made a really good point about